Howdy, folks. Happy Tuesday. We're all here. We're going to be talking some, rumors, some news, some stuff. But I have to start off with two things. One, anybody who calls any company and calls their customer service line who is stuck on hold for 10, 15, 20 minutes, when you're listening to like their little jingle or some like muzak that they've pumped in and it repeats over and over for like every 30 seconds, you want to go on a killing spree. It's the most annoying thing in the world. It's an, I won't name the company, but it's a rental place, and they're a sponsor of a particular hockey league. And, they're playing their like, thank you, thank you, thank you. We pick you up, all this stuff on this little commercial. And it's repeating over and over. And they're not answering the phone. And I'm just like, I had to hang up and call back. And of course, when you hang up again, it goes right through the next time. But you could have been stuck on that call for 20 minutes.
Yeah, I've been involved.
Now,
I'll go ahead. Here's what I could say about that, Mike. Yesterday, I was returning my rental car because we had wrecks at similar times. Mine worse than yours, I guess. And although you have suffered more than me, like my car suffered, you're suffering. But at any rate, I call up Hertz because now Hertz has a lot of these satellite offices where they're like, this one Hertz by me is inside of Pep Boys, and Hertz is tied to the hip with State Farm, so you don't have a choice. You got to use Hertz. So I call Hertz. And I said, hey, by chance, if I bring my car there, can you drive me back to my house? And they're like, yeah, sure. How long will it take you? I said, 10, 15 minutes. I get there 15 minutes, they're not there. I wait 10, 15 minutes. I just drop the keys off with the guy at Pep Boys, hoping no one smashes into the car and leave and walk home. I try them 3 other times. They don't pick up. And then finally, like an hour later, they pick up. Oh, yeah, we got your car. Yeah, it's fine. It's like,
yeah.
Come on.
And now this, everybody can appreciate this. And I can appreciate the bad luck that I have had the last few weeks. I get into an accident. I get a rental car. My car is going to I'm supposed to get back today after almost over 3 weeks. Last week, yeah, miracle of miracles. Last week, I'm at the grocery store. I'm putting groceries in the trunk of my rental. Somebody pulls into the space next to my rental and scratches the rental. So, of course, I'm pissed off. I get all the insurance information. I go back to the rental place. I file an incident report. I do all the stuff that you're supposed to do, and they give me a new vehicle. Yesterday, I get a copy of a incident report blank from the rental company after I'd already filed something immediately that they wanted me to fill out. And it's got like 500 things of information. So I'm going through it this morning. It's taking me an hour. And the one thing I don't have is the license plate of the first rental car. So that's why I was on hold for 45 minutes. And finally, when I get through to somebody and they give me the license plate number, they said, well, why are you asking? I says, well, because your corporate office sent me a copy of an incident report they want me to fill out. The guy says, oh, you came in and did the incident report last week. You don't have to do that. I don't know why they sent it to you.
Well, there you go. I mean, I just.
These are the
Can
same
you
people.
friggin' believe it?
These are the same people that survey things at home. These are the same people.
Mike, there's a great Frank Zappa song off his Chic Your Booty album called Fresh Flakes. This is the story of your life. Go listen to it. He even does an awesome Bob Dylan impersonation in the song. It's all about your life.
Oh, man.
Raising my lonely dental floss. Okay, anyway, I'm done.
Get
started. To Montana soon.
And one thing you know about
the dental floss
around to get a call. Though, Rush, you sound like you're talking to us from the face of the moon today. So you're a little bit
I've cranked him all the way. He's in his car, so
okay.
Hold on. Let me.
Are you using a particular microphone or a headphone or something?
I don't have a headphone.
Okay, that's fine then. You're fine. You're fine.
Yeah,
that's best we can do. That's totally fine.
We just can't talk over him. That's all.
You're gonna use a headphone. I was gonna say forget it, but get rid of it since you're not. That's fine. Okay, let's just go then.
All right.
Well, everything's fine. It's
Yes.
technology. I mean, what are you paying for this? Yeah, come on. Anyway, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, Hockey World. It is Tuesday, December 11th, 2018.
I'm corporate America's biggest fan, Michael Agello.
I'm Peter Tessier, paying homage to Gritty.
Oh, wow.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund. If you'd like to get to an insider, press 7. You're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that brings you hockey news, and every weekday at some point. So, I wanted to get to this. I wanted to talk about this memo first to start with, because this world famous memo I wrote about today that was sent around last week apparently to the referees. I don't know if you guys have discussed this yet.
No.
That's gonna be okay. Cool. I haven't been here, but getting a lot of attention today among players, especially who have been joking about it and saying, like what next? Basically the memo went out and said that they want the NHL wants the referees to call less penalties. Essentially, they think there's too many power plays in the NHL. They think that they want to like loosen things up a little bit, and and that's all they really. From what I was told, that's all it was really said. But it's been taken now by others who've written articles about it to mean like the NHL wants the game to get physical and more violent. I don't think that's the case. I think they wanted more or less the less of the ticky tack, penalties called, which I think we all agree, with at times would be great. But the rough thing about this isn't just like a meter that you can dial forward and backwards. Like it's not, and that seems to be the NHL's MO over the last couple of years. Like I remember once joking around with somebody who worked at Google, and they said they had a dial on the wall. They could make as much money as they wanted to. They could just dial it up or dial it back. The NHL feels like they can do that with power plays, and I really don't think that. And I know that there's been a lot less fights, a lot less aggressiveness. But I have a theory on this, and I'm going to throw out to you guys, and about why why we have less aggressiveness in the NHL, and it has nothing to do with fighting. I'm not talking about violence. I'm not talking about anything like that. I mean, none of us want to see illegal hits. None of us want to see hits to the head or blows to the head or anything like that. We all agree on that. But what I do think, my biggest pet peeve, and I've been sitting next to Russ in the press box, he's heard me say this as well. It happened in a game we were watching, a game earlier this year. Can't remember which game it was. It might have been the Tampa game. I hate the fact that, when I was growing up, when I was playing hockey, when I was taught hockey and everything like that, and when I was watching hockey as a kid, there was this thing called finishing your check, right? And finishing your check meant that, if the last person who had the puck, you could hit that person. You couldn't illegally hit them, but you could follow through. So basically, if you were skating as hard as you could to get the puck from that person, and that person threw the puck away, dumped it off, you could still hit that person as long as it was legal. You couldn't, and that finishing of checks was a big part of the game. It was a big part of momentum swings. We all remember going to games where teams came out flying and finishing all their checks and everything like that. And now you see a guy dump a puck off, and the check is finished, and I know that there's a mystical or whatever 2-second rule they have now or something like that I've heard about.
Not even
2.3 seconds.
2.3 seconds, right? Which is just ridiculous. I mean, the idea here is players should be allowed to finish their checks, and here's why. And it's not because we want to see people get hurt, and it's not because we need more hitting or more checking. It's that if you're going to play aggressive hockey, there's only so much. You need a certain stopping distance in the first place, or else you're going to you're going to get hurt, or you're going to hurt somebody else. And if you're going hard after a play, you should be allowed to finish through with that play. Otherwise, what happens now when players get called for finishing their checks, and the call they always use is interference, which infuriates me to no end, because the interference rule is was the person the last to touch the puck, and they are in this case, so they shouldn't be interference. Right. But if players stop skating hard to play defense, then that's what they have to do if they're not allowed to finish their checks. So the bottom line is here, you have like a bunch of guys, and I've talked to players about this. They're sick of me talking about it, but they all agree that if we're going to play hard defense or we're going to forecheck hard, we can't, because we're going to get called for finishing our checks.
And the perfect example of that is the Zach Hyman suspension on Charlie McAvoy from Saturday. It wasn't a head hit. It wasn't Rule 48. It was a high hit on the chest.
Mm-hmm.
as McAvoy passed the puck around the net. He was looking in that direction, did not see Hyman, who was coming along the boards. Hyman hit him and didn't crumple him against the boards, but it was pretty close. It was a hard hit. And in the explanation, George Peros said it was a dangerous hit and it was predatory.
Well, see, I think the difference was, and I agree that was on the edge. But I think the difference that I was saying again, and that's it was a bit of a blindside check. I thought
it was late, and it was slight. It wasn't blindside, but it was late. It was significantly late. But what I'm saying, Eck, is for you, when you're talking about finishing your check, that is the prototypical finishing your check. He had passed the puck. He wasn't looking in the direction, and he hit him. He didn't hit him head high. He didn't slam him into the boards from behind.
Right.
It was what would 10, 15 years ago have been deemed a clean check. Now, I think, and Russ can speak to this, McAvoy had just come back from a 20-game absence for concussion issues. So my feeling is that Hyman got suspended just as much for the hit as he did for the fact that he hit somebody who had concussion issue and was just coming back. You can't base suspensions on that, but they didn't suspend Ryan Reeves and Tom Wilson last week for hits that were similar, although in the center of the ice, and they did suspend Hyman for that one.
Yeah, there's no question. I agree, Mike, that's part of what it was because of McAvoy's concussion. The other big problem here is, though, when they came out of the lockout, we saw more power plays. Even the league was like, we are going to see more power plays with the rule changes and everything else, and now they're changing it back. This is what I hate about all leagues, and when they artificially sort of spurn and affect the rules to change scoring, because everything has to always do with scoring. And at the end of the day, I wish they would just leave things alone and just go with your blanket rules.
I don't think it does this time, Russ, because scoring is up. I mean, I don't think I don't think scoring is about scoring.
Partly, and okay.
No, but 5-on-5 scoring isn't, right? So that's probably what they're looking at.
Power play scoring's up. Right. So think of it this way. In the 2004-2005 lockout, we came out of that, and one of the key issues was there's a lot of rule changes that happened. We ended up with the shootout.
Right.
We ended up coming out of that, and the league had time to do other things and worry about contract negotiations. They had time to look at the product on the ice, and they realized they had to do something about the product on the ice, particularly because they lost a year of hockey. So what was the one era we had just come out of? They changed away from the clutch and grab.
Yeah.
Players are now coming in at speeds unheard of before.
Right.
Yeah.
And the gear, even 15 years ago or 13 years ago, let's just go through 2005, is the sticks are better. The gear is better.
Yeah.
It's more protective. It's more comprehensive. There is the fitness levels that we're seeing now. Just remember, in 2005, BioSteel didn't exist. The things these guys are doing now have gone to new heights. Yes, they trained before, but now it's in overdrive. The players are in better shape than ever before. The level of skating in this league is insane.
Yep.
And now they come flying in, and injuries are in the increase. Concussions are like out of this world compared to what they used to be. One, because we're a lot more aware of them, but because of the way hits are.
Yeah.
This is just as much a player safety thing as it is about scoring. If you're going to, the NHL needs to decide what it wants its product to look like. What are fans going to identify with? And then it has to build it from that point. Not saying, well, we need to tinker with this, because that's cause and effect. You change this, coaches have a pressure to win. They have to do something. What do they do? They find the alternative way to deal with it. You can't just put one finger in the dike and then hope another hole doesn't spring loose. You've got to look at it as a holistic, bigger sense. And this is one thing. And just to finish my point, the one thing I want to see change, if you're going to let players go with abandon and you're going to change this stuff with finishing your checks, if you're going to take that away, then you know what you have to do? You have to take away the ability for a player to chip the puck and the defenseman to skate in front of them and completely obstruct them.
Right.
Get rid of that and make the defenseman turn so they go at the same time rather than to slow down. That's the biggest problem. If the defenseman can't get in the way and he has to play back a bit and then adjust with the player coming at him because the player isn't tossing the puck to the boards and going to the inside.
But what they're afraid of in that
this
instance.
game moves. What's that?
What they're afraid in that instance, Peter, is that you make the defenseman turn and the forward is going at full speed, and then he freight trains the defenseman into the end boards. That's what they're concerned about. I mean,
but he'll blow right past the defenseman.
Maybe, but they'll also try to neutralize him too, and they'll have the speed advantage.
It's impossible to take that little to actually have a rule that says defense can't like get in the way of players skating in, because it's really just
obstruction. It's
obstruction, but it's so hard to actually prove at times because there are so many players going different directions. There's a natural like you can't run picks. It's like what do you call it? Basketball, you have a straight up pick. That's what you can do. You can't do that in the NHL. That's interference. But it happens all the time. And it happens all the time, as a result of things accidentally, and I do think part of, the safety is the defense being able to hold up their guys a little bit, not through methods of like grabbing them like they used to be able to, but it's skating in front of them or shielding from basically like what you would do in soccer, like shield the ball. There's some of that going on. And I think that's kind of hard to avoid. I think it's hard to monitor. And I think that, there's no question, Peter, that you're 100% right. That there's players who are skating so fast. There's going to be more injuries. There's going to be more collisions. It's just the way it is. Equipment's lighter, but not necessarily more protective. And you can't protect against brain injuries no matter what equipment you have. So it doesn't even matter. So, that at the end of the day, two guys colliding at 35 miles an hour, someone's going to get a concussion. It's just how it works. It's physics, right? You can't get around it. So but I think that a little bit of that could actually be slowed down by allowing people to finish their checks, because there's no question that is it's a physical aspect of the game. It's defense taking a pounding a little bit. Remember that whole concept of the defense is taking a pounding today, and they're wearing them down. That's gone. That doesn't exist at all right now.
But you know what, Eck, the problem is if you're going to let guys finish their checks, if they're anywhere near the boards, they're going to be putting guys through the boards again.
Well, that's boarding, and that's always existed. But once you blur the line again, like you basically have to spell it out. If you're letting guys finish, there have to be areas that you can do it in. Right, you have to explain what boarding is. We all know what boarding is. That's a rule that already exists.
But you know what's going to happen with that?
I know, and players are going to get called for boarding, and I think that's fine. And then when we were kids, if someone finished their check away from the boards and you hit somebody in the boards, that was what it was. We know what it's boarding. You don't do that. I'm talking about finishing your checks like open ice and not blindsided checks. I'm not talking about blindsided checks. Were always a penalty. There's certain things that have always been penalties. It's just there's a definite step forward, backward thing that we're doing here. That but trying to get to this happy medium. And I think it's not.
But where the game is going right now, this is the thing, and I love speed in the game, I love skill in the game, but with the rules and the way the game is going right now, it's going towards, smaller players are being drafted in the first round because they have skill and they can play the game the way the game is being legislated right now. If we go in a direction where we want to emphasize physicality again, then I think you're going to see it go back to the way it was probably in the 90s, where big behemoth guys are being drafted, and Lindros and Leclerc and Chris Gratton and guys who are 6'5", who and now Lindros could skate. Leclerc wasn't that great of a skater, but bigger guys, even though they couldn't skate that well, were sought after because teams needed that big behemoth out there.
You're not going to see that ever again, because everyone's going to have to skate. And bigger guys are going to get drafted because they're bigger always anyway. But everybody has to skate now, and everybody can skate now because of training and everything. That's just, there are hardly any players out there that just literally can't skate, very well or what have you. I think that's kind of
ones that we see. There's plenty that are in the minors.
I'm sure there are, but anyone who makes the NHL, you do have to be able to play a little bit. You can't just be a goon. You have to be able to play. There's no question about it. But what's interesting about the effect that Tom Wilson is having, right? Like Tom Wilson had a huge effect last year on the Stanley Cup run on the team, and he's having a huge effect. He had a huge effect this year on the Capitals when he returned.
Right.
We are seeing the beginning of the cyclical thing that happens in the NHL, right? Where if no Tom Wilsons exist, and then a couple exists. The couple that exist make a huge impact, and then everyone starts to get a Tom Wilson, right?
Well, right, and I wrote about this on the weekend because of what happened with Austin Matthews last Thursday, where Nicholas Kronval hit him in the corner. It looked like he nearly got another shoulder injury, and then Boston really outmuscled the Leafs in Boston on Saturday night, and Mike Babcock came out last Friday, and said, well, our toughness is our power play, which is one of the more asinine comments I've heard from a really good and respected coach, because you cannot de-emphasize another team's physicality by a single power play. They will take that, and especially in the playoffs, they will take that exchange every single friggin' time. If you have a chance to run John Tavares or Mitch Marner or Austin Matthews into the boards and lower the percentage of his effectiveness because he's hurt or because he's in pain, they will do it every single time. It's called a war of attrition in the playoffs for a reason.
You're right, and I mean, I know what we all know what he's trying to say there, but it depends how the game's being called. And that was the article I read in the Atlantic about this memo got into the Flyers-Penguins game last weekend and said that in that game, the Flyers were allowed to throw their bodies around a lot, and the Penguins, didn't get the power plays and therefore didn't win the game.
Right.
I didn't really see that game the same way. I mean, this Flyers team, first of all, is just people. It's easy for people to consider the Flyers physical, but they're just not. I mean, they're not a physical team.
No, they're not physical.
I mean,
a couple of guys.
I mean, that's the issue, right? So, I mean, I think that I do think, because the other side of things is that we just take away all of this and we end up with like roller hockey, right? Like we end up with like roller hockey.
No, but wait. It won't be roller hockey, but you do have to decide, like in football, if you lose possession of the football, it's a really big deal because you may not get it back for 10, 15 minutes. In hockey, if you lose possession of the puck, you're getting it back pretty quick. Sometimes it's a goal against you, but most times it's not. So what you have to decide is, do you still need to hit to separate a guy from the puck, or do you just need to play a different brand of defense? I mean, it can be done, and with speed in the game, you don't necessarily have to have this big physical element.
Right.
Yeah, I don't agree. I mean, I think that we were headed that way, but I think that what we're, like I say, again, Tom Wilson, what we're seeing with other players like him is that there is a physical element that needs to exist.
Right. I think there has to, the thing is, I think there has to be a balance. If you look at the Capitals last year, they had top end skill. They had Oshie, Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, Backstrom, Carlson, all skilled players. Ovechkin can also throw his weight around. Wilson is a bull in a china shop. Smith Pelly made his presence felt. Guys like Orpik and Niskanen have sandpaper. There's a balance. And like my critique of the Leafs right now is really there's nobody other than maybe Nazem Kadri who provides any kind of sandpaper. A team like Winnipeg, a team like Nashville, a team like I think Tampa Bay, Boston, they have both elements. That's why they're contenders.
That's team toughness. It's not like, because you have Tom Wilson, I have to get Cody McLeod. No, it's team toughness that you need. That's what. But that's different. That's not saying just because you have Tom Wilson, I have to go get a Tom Wilson. I don't agree with that.
I'm not advocating the return of Colton Orr and Fraser McLaren to Toronto.
But I mean, Wilson played a factor in the Stanley Cup Finals. I mean,
right, but Wilson can also play hockey. Wilson's a top six guy.
I'm not saying that we're going to ever go back to the era of just goons. I don't think that's coming. But I do think that with every small player that's added to the NHL, there is going to be this natural counterbalance that's coming. That's going to come back where these players are going to have to. Where if a guy's small and can skate really fast, that's one thing. But say a guy can skate really fast, but he's also 6 inches taller.
Yeah, but I disagree with that because if you go look at like the Canadian Football League, those guys are a lot smaller. The sport's different; it's faster. They need to have more of a speed element. There will be some day where the average height goes down tremendously in the NHL. You don't have to have all these big behemoths. That's not correct.
Yeah.
Plus, they only play with 3
the Canadian Football League can have smaller players is because the field's 30% larger. So. Right,
no,
you need guys you can get around.
Smaller, it's gonna. History tells us that it'll get smaller until it doesn't. Go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
No, I was just I am agreeing with you. I think that's totally the case. It will get smaller because what's happening now is teams are realizing they can actually win without having to ice people who are flawed or one-dimensional players. They can actually find players who are skill set. Maybe they don't have they're not 6'2" and 210 pounds. They're 5'10" and 178 pounds,
Right.
and they can still win using that player because the game is getting faster and we need someone who has more skill, and their detriment is size. So maybe they don't go into the corners all the time and do the total dirty work, but they can do it now against 50% of the league as opposed to only 20%.
Right. And because Russ, sure as hell, the next couple drafts you cover, when you're doing the combines and when you're talking to prospects, people like that, you're going to hear the words, he's the next Tom Wilson.
No, I disagree. Actually,
I guarantee that's going to happen. It always happens.
No, I disagree. Actually, what will happen is there'll be a few teams that believe they have to do that.
Right.
And if somebody spends a first or a second round pick on that, they'll be foolish, like when the Lukes were foolish and took Tyler Biggs. It'll be like that, and it'll be that obvious.
I'm not saying people won't make mistakes with it. They will. But you'll hear that of certain players that would not have really even been considered that much before.
Yeah.
Like, he's considered in the first round because he's the next Tom Wilson.
But also, it's hard to even say I am drafting the next Tom Wilson because most guys that you draft that are that size with that speed don't get to the league right away. They usually take 5 or 6 years.
Right.
Those guys are the slower track guys like Nick Ritchie's. So, again, teams don't want to necessarily draft guys that take that long either. So I don't think they're going to start loading up on these guys.
Well, they won't load up on them, but let's just say that teams are intrigued by a guy who has that kind of physical stature, who could play in the league at the speed that it's at right now. And like, for example, the Rangers, when they drafted Sean Day, what is he, 6'4", 230? I mean, he's a big kid, but he's got skill. And the whole thing is whether he could put it all together. And they got him, I believe, in the second round. So, that's an intriguing possibility for the Rangers. And Wilson was I think a mid first round pick. And,
nobody's spending a mid first round anymore on a Tom Wilson type. They're not.
Right.
If they do, they're drafted wrong.
I mean,
unless he's a plus speed, plus skill player to go along with being a bull in a china shop.
Oh, no, you're right. And these guys will take their time to develop. That's right. Right, you're 100% right. These guys take their time to develop, but they still will be. There will be some drafted because of what Tom Wilson has brought to the league. And I'm not talking first, second, third round. But I'm saying there will be players who are drafted down the line.
There'll be guys like that drafted. There's no question about it, because there will always be guys that are big guys that go into a draft that you say, all right, you know what, I'll take a chance on this guy. But what I'm basically saying is to develop those guys, to spend early assets on those guys, teams aren't going to do that. Like Wilson in this era is still drafted too early. He may have won a cup with Washington, but they had all these other things in place. You can't draft a guy based on toughness. The Rangers did that with Dylan McElrath. They were lacking team toughness. They drafted the guy, and my big problem with that was how many years will it take for that toughness to get there? And it took forever, and by the time it got there, he was so injured it didn't matter.
Now, let me ask this, because I heard this on Toronto radio this morning, and obviously you guys, you and Eck, Russ and Eck are closer to it because you go to Flyers games. And the name of Wayne Simmons came up, and it's going to come up a lot between now and February 25th. And in terms of if the Flyers decide to trade him, what they will get in return. And I think that, obviously with going on the subject that we were just talking about, a player who can play physically, can keep up with the pace still, is a rental, so it's not a long-term commitment. Darren Drager was saying, well, he's going to probably be the typical player prospect first-round pick in terms of what Philadelphia can get back for him. I'm skeptical of that. I don't know if that.
I'm skeptical.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm skeptical, too. I think it will be a conditional first-round pick and a B or a C level prospect. That's it. I don't think it's anything more than that.
Yeah, I don't
Now,
know.
do you think the bidding do you think the bidding war could bid up Simmons to that type of package? Because like, for example, I don't think like if Boston was interested in Wayne Simmons, and that would be typical because he's a Bruins type of player. Are the Boston Bruins giving up a first round pick, Zaboral and Jake DeBrusk for Wayne Simmons? Not a chance in hell. No way.
No, I don't think at first. I actually don't think we're going to see first round picks go almost for anyone anymore. I think that's another thing. First round picks.
That's why I think conditional. If they were to make the Stanley Cup, it becomes the first.
Yeah.
Or if he signed a long deal or something like that. But
right.
But because you can't. I mean, you just can't. First round picks in the NHL are proving to be the first. We no longer have like the first 3 or 4 guys. This is the first like 15 to 20 guys are all making impacts pretty quickly. So it's just.
Right. Well, I mean, Peter, Winnipeg traded their first in the Stastny deal. I mean, that I don't know if that really had detrimental effects to them because their organization is so deep.
Yeah, you once you have a deep organization, you can afford to spend those things, right?
Yeah.
That's just the way it goes. Like, I mean, a first round pick for the Leafs this year should be an automatic. Like they like everyone should be calling up Dubas right now saying when you want to trade it. It's a given, right? And that's fine. The other thing when you talk about picks though too is that teams are starting to realize that you can find like a bottom 15 first round pick is no more of an assurance on talent anymore than a bottom than a second round pick. That's like your top 15 has gotten deeper on good years, but your bottom 15 hasn't increased your likelihood. Some years it does, but you're just as easily having a 40th pick,
right?
As you are. I think you're right, but I think you're right for the wrong reasons. I think I don't know.
Russ can talk more accurately to that. I mean, because a guy like Pasternak was picked in the 20s.
See, this is my theory, and then Russ can agree with it. All right, so so the first 15 picks are absolutely better than they've ever been before. But the issue is now there is so much depth that from 15 to like 45 is all really good. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Right?
In most drafts, I would say on the average, that's true. I mean, I'm thinking, what was Roslovic taken in the 20s, right?
Yeah.
And he's playing. So, but again, it does depend still on the draft. But if you want me to say on average, that's true. It's probably true on average. It's probably close.
There's just a lot more talent coming out than ever before. I mean, there really is. I mean, when you look at the impact, it's all.
It does vary from draft to draft, though, because I can say from the Toronto perspective, Freddie Gauthier was taken in the 20s in 2013, and he's at best a borderline NHLer. And Rasmus Sandin, the Leafs' second first round pick this year, who was picked I think 27th or 29th or something like that, it's possible he makes the NHL next year, the way he's playing in the American Hockey League. So
I think this changed really recently, like 15, 16, like around then. I think that's when we've started to see this huge influx because I think
Russ, to your point, in the 2015 draft, there are only one player after pick 20 who's not played one game in the NHL, and only one player with one game or less. Everyone else has played a minimum of 17 games. And that person, the low one, is Gabriel Carlsson on Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I mean, yes, there's definitely value there. But when you go and look at the second round, it's not as big a drop-off. And I think that's the point that some teams realize.
Still, you know what? I agree with that partially, but it still depends on the organization. If you go back and you look at Edmonton Oilers in the second round, it's a disaster for the most part.
It also depends on the year. You have to know your year, and you have to have a very good understanding of where you're scouting too, because you want to make sure, like, if you know you're going to, like, your scouts, like now, like if you're Toronto, your scouts should know we don't even need to worry about the first round pick. This thing is in play, and if we get it, great. We'll figure it out. But they need to be scouting on picks 40 and down, like players who are going to be there and find the diamonds in the rough there. And I think that's what teams are starting to figure out.
They do anyhow, but again, like historically speaking, like if you look at like the Sharks or you look at Nashville, those teams can pick in the second round and do just fine. But not every organization can do that. Even a Winnipeg, I don't know long term if they were to lose another couple first-round picks, what that would do to them, as an
Right.
example.
Right.
Let me go in this direction because I find it funny. Chad Johnson was placed on waivers yesterday and claimed by Anaheim.
Well, Ryan Miller is just announced that. I think that had to do with it. It was just announced that Ryan Miller's going to miss like 3 months. So
Yeah.
Right, and they
minimum 6 weeks, right? They're reviewing
Yeah.
him too.
and they made a minor league trade too. Yesterday they had to stock up the San Diego in the AHL, so they picked up Jeff Glass from the Marlies. But the point I was trying to make is anytime any goalie right now is put on waivers, they're getting claimed because I think
Right.
goaltending has gotten to the point like quarterbacking in the NFL. There are not enough good goaltenders, not enough goaltenders, period, to go around for 31 teams, and now it's going to be 32.
That's definitely true. And you know what's even more about that, Mike, is the fact that more goalies are getting hurt than ever before. Like,
Yeah.
it's an
Yeah,
unbelievable
more
amount
goalies
of
are getting hurt. That's true.
goalie injuries. Every team needs 2 legitimate goalies, and they know it. Like, they have to have, and their third goalie has to be.
They need
good too,
3
because he's
goalies.
probably going to get in there.
They need Tampa Bay can thank their lucky stars that when Vasilevsky went down. Now they're a great team, and I'm sure that being a great team in front of Louis Domingue has helped. But Louis Domingue has got like 13 victories. He was second star of the week last week, and we were all saying, and me included, was saying Tampa Bay is going to be in trouble the next month without Vasilevsky. They haven't skipped a friggin' beat. They haven't missed anything.
Well, they've given up a lot of goals, but they're still winning. I mean, it's pretty
They're
funny.
still winning.
But here's the difference between the quarterback and the goalie when you're drafting. When you're drafting the quarterback, at least that person's been in college minimum a couple of years, so you have an idea of what that person can do mostly at the next level, not 100%.
Right.
But when you're getting an 19-year-old goalie, most of them are nothing like what they're going to be in 3 or 4 years. So it makes it so much harder.
But other point I'm trying to make is the teams out there that we've been talking about that need goaltending badly, like St. Louis and Philadelphia. Good luck. I mean, it's going to be tough. If Jonathan Quick is out there, okay, fine. I'm sure LA. If LA is willing to move on to go towards the young goaltenders like Cal Peterson and Campbell, I can understand that with them sort of like being in a sort of a retool reset mode. I get that, but the price is not going it's not going to be, well, we want to get rid of this contract. They're going to expect to get something significant back.
It's possible that they could get like a player that is way better than we thought for Jonathan Quick. I've been talking to people about this. Like, there is a lot of support for Jonathan Quick around the NHL. It's like, and then that kind of leads me to my next the next topic that would end with today.
Okay, but give me an idea. Don't just throw it out there like that. Give us the idea of the quality of player.
All right, Travis Sanheim is not out of the question.
Wow,
right,
you know what? And if I were the Flyers, I'd be like, no way, man. Sorry.
I'm just saying. I mean that.
I know. No, I'm just.
Well,
I'm
I mean,
just,
That's the level. I mean, you're talking about like,
yeah.
Okay, Quick, of course, is under contract for a couple more years.
Four or 4
4 years. It's a cheap number though. It's not terrible. It's fine. It's workable, especially when you have a goalie like the Flyers are going to have a goalie on their entry level contract in Carter Hart. So their goalie budget, it makes sense for the Flyers to do it in that way, because they can actually go out and spend $5 million.
Okay, so wait. So now you're telling me you've gone from Carter Hart's going to be the starter maybe this year to next year to now, well, he'll be the backup and he's still going to develop. Like, that's still wrong too. He's not going to develop as a backup.
No, I don't know that he's going to be the backup. I mean, we could be looking at Quick as the backup here in Philly, mentoring.
No, you wouldn't. Stop.
No, I'm serious. I mean, no, think about it.
He quit. He would quit before that happened. Trust me. This guy will not ever be a backup. You know that, and I know that.
No, not anymore. I mean, there's a point at which goalies get older, and if they want to have longevity in the league, they have to shift that role. That's what they do.
Well, that's Luongo didn't do that. He's
right.
39 years old and gets injured every time he breathes.
No, I know not every goalie is
the number one.
The question on Quick.
Well, Quick is better than Luongo. I mean, like this is this kind of goalie. Like that's you're basically telling me Henrik Lundqvist would do that, and I would just laugh at you.
No, I'm not gonna. I mean, and Lundqvist isn't there yet, and I'm not saying Quick is there yet either. I mean, Quick could be the starter this year.
But that's what I'm saying. If they get there, they'll just quit. They won't do it.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
the one thing I agree with the fact that Carter Hart is the heir apparent there, and Carter Hart he needs at least this year and maybe part of next year in the American Hockey League to get repetitions, get experience before being thrown to the wolves in the NHL. If you trade for a guy like Quick and Quick is playing 60 games. Carter Hart is not going to develop playing 22 games in the NHL. It just doesn't work that way. He's either going to be the number one in Lehigh Valley and continue to play 50,
No, like, but you
55
also
games.
he also doesn't have to be a 70 good game player in the NHL either. I mean, he could come in and play 50 games, and Quick could play 30 games. And
Quick is not going to do that.
he has no choice, Russ. I mean, he's going to do that either in LA or in Philly. So where would he rather do it?
In LA, Cal Peterson will barely play when Jonathan Quick is healthy.
The beaches are better in LA than Philly.
The other goalies are going to. The Kings are going to get something for Quick. They're not going to sit there with those other two developing goalies and keep him. I'm talking to people. They're not going to do it. They're just.
All right. So here's an example. Okay, even just getting off Quick for just a minute. Let's say the Flyers do go get a goalie because we're all pretty convinced they're either going to do that or get a defenseman. Let's say they get a goalie. They're going to have to get a goalie with term. Unless you're getting Varlamov, which I'm sure Colorado's not giving up, you're getting a goalie with some kind of term. So no matter what, you are going to keep Carter Hart in the AHL for a certain amount of years based on the fact that you're going to get a goalie now. Because like I said, even Jonathan Bernier got a 3-year contract. Goalies all have term on them now.
Yeah, but Bernier got a contract knowing he would be a backup too. I mean, that's another.
Right, for 1 year.
For 1 year, maybe.
As soon as Jimmy Howard's contract is up. As soon as Howard's contract is up, I mean, unless he re-signs with the Wings, Bernier is their starter.
Right.
Right. No, I know that, and I think that he's thinking that way too. But the Wings could go out and get somebody else. Mike Smith is another guy the Flyers could get this year. That only has this year left on his contract. But there are other players like that. But I'm telling you, I mean, you got to realize that.
But Mike Smith's not an upgrade. I'm talking about a goalie with an upgrade.
No, I'm talking. Yeah, I mean, they're two very different plans. Jonathan Quick and Mike Smith. I'm just saying that there's the Flyers are going to go one.
Do you really think Fletcher is going to go out and get another lateral move goalie? I don't think so.
Well, I'll give you the name of somebody who might be an upgrade, who probably is available and isn't long term, signed long term, and that's Corey Crawford. And if there's
told they're not getting rid of him no matter what.
Well, okay. Yeah. I mean, if that's the case, that's the case, then fine. But I'm saying if they're well, that's the thing. If Chicago is buying into the fact that this is a 1-year retool or 1 year, let's go for Jack Hughes type of thing, and then next year they're going to build around Taves and Kane, and everything's going to be wonderful.
That's what they're going to do. That's what they're doing.
They're lying to themselves. They're delusional. They're absolutely friggin' delusional.
X spoke to the attendance issue there, and he's right. They did have a time when the attendance dipped so much that they don't want to ever go back to that.
Yeah,
and I get that, but when you think of things that way, and this is the flawed thinking of the Vancouver Canucks the last few years. When you're thinking with your pocketbook, when you're thinking about keeping the stands filled instead of what is best to get your team back to a level of competitiveness, where they're a playoff contender and winning a Stanley Cup, you don't patchwork. You tear it down and you build it up.
Okay, but I agree with you, Mike, but here's the problem. And we see this in the NFL because there's so much money in the NFL now, and the NHL's heading that way, especially with this gambling revenue that will get added in.
Yeah,
if there's a lot of money floating around, nobody's going to pay big top dollar money for tickets for rebuilding other than a few markets like the Leafs did. Most of those fans don't want that, and a lot of those teams will try and do it on the fly. They really will.
Yeah, one last
text. I got a text from a scout who says for Russ here, who's watching the show, who says Russ is completely wrong. Quick will have to take a backup role. That's where he's at.
Well,
yeah, we'll see. I believe it when I see it, Mr. Scout. Thank you.
I'm not just saying that. Just
tell Quick that.
I'm right.
Tell Quick that. Make sure
telling me that is one thing. Go tell Jonathan Quick that. I've been in the locker room with him.
Oh, I have too. Believe me, I've spent a lot of time with Jonathan Quick.
Tell Quick that, and bring your Kevlar vest. One more thing. that came out of the Board of Governors, and we've talked about it before, and I hope it gains momentum, even though apparently Gary Bettman is vehemently against it. But apparently a lot of the governors with 32 teams want the expanded playoffs. 16 out of 32 is not enough. They want 20. They want a play-in 7 versus 10, 8 versus 9.
No.
I'm all for it. I really am. It's more.
You know what? No. You got to shorten the season then.
Well,
And they won't do that.
Then shorten it. Hey, shorten it to 78 games.
No, you shorten the preseason. That's what you shorten.
Yes, cut it to 4 games.
Well, yeah, I mean that's a gimme, anyways. Cut it to 3.
Well, right, but hey,
and I totally agree that it is going to be, if they do this play-in, it will not be an 8 versus 9. I wrote about this a couple times. It got laughed off.
No, it'll be 7, 10, 8.
I know, and that's what I've written. I go back and I've talked about it. And
I know you have.
So it's like, and that, because that's what I was hearing from the NHL all this time, that it would not be like that, like just 8 versus 9.
Would it be just like a one-off, kind of like a
single game, 7 versus 10, 8 versus 9 to get it.
So 8 versus 9 wins, 9 beats 8 in a one game. What happens if it goes overtime? Sudden death?
Oh yeah. No, it's a playoff game.
A playoff game. So then you go to war to be the 9th, to be the 7th and 8th team, to then go play 1 and 2.
Yeah.
What a reward!
Right, Peter.
They're not going out into the infield and clubbing each other. Like that's
in the 60s they did, but not
yeah.
Now,
okay.
And you know what happened? The 7th and 8th.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The 7th and 8th seeds will dominate games 1 of those series because they're coming off this intense thing, and that and they're gonna but by games 4 or 5 they'll be shot.
But what's gonna end up happening is the season ends on a Sunday night. The one playoff game will be on Tuesday. The next will be on Wednesday, and the playoffs will start either on Thursday or Friday. That's what
I can see that.
The playoffs will start on Wednesday. Is what they'll do.
Well, they always do, but you have to accommodate.
They'll have like the 4 and 5 teams play on Wednesday. They'll have like
maybe that's right. That they could do that. Yes, right.
Yeah, so that's what they'll have that, and that's how they'll play it out. But yeah, the other thing quickly before we go is Drew Doughty. Okay, I talked a long time last night because remember Drew Doughty's on his first year of, or is he even on his first year?
No, it kicks in next summer.
He's not even on his first year of his major contract he signed. There's almost nobody who believes he's going to play very long in LA with that contract. It's incredible when you talk around. People say that the Kings realize that if they're going to move Doughty, they got to do it now because they're going to get the most return for him now. That his contract, is what it is, and that people will take Drew Doughty on that contract. That they will go for it.
It's going to be a hockey trade, though, Ak. It's going to have to be. It's not going to be like we'll give you 2 first-round picks and 2 of our best prospects.
No. I agree with that. It's not going to be that.
It's going to be like, I'll use Toronto as an example. It'll be Nylander and Gardner, or Nylander and like 2 pieces.
But I think I honestly do believe that this is going to happen. I think LA is getting to the point where they are, and now there's 2 schools of thought in LA, as usually there are in every one of these NHL franchises. It's very funny. One of the things I've learned over these years of following rumors is that if you talk to the ownership versus talking to the management, you'll get 2 totally different concepts on how aggressive we're going to be and where we're going to go, and are we sellers or buyers. It takes a long time for those sides to get on the same page always. But right now, there's still a group in LA that definitely said we're going to go for it. We're getting everybody healthy now. We're going to still try to make the playoffs. There's another group that really is like, this is the beginning. If we don't move now, we're going to wait till these players aren't worth enough to move. So,
well, from what I saw last night, briefly watching them play Detroit, I mean, there's just nothing there anymore.
There's nothing there. They're a god awful team to watch. They're really boring, and this is a fan base that had 3 Stanley Cups. This is a fan base that is really giving up on them, because when you come off of 3 Stanley Cups and then you're watching now, this fan base is perfectly fine with them tearing it apart. They don't care if they trade everybody.
Okay, Russ.
I don't know if Rob Blake is in that mode though. That's the only thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's like that. That's why you have these differing opinions.
Well, the question is, I mean, because Doughty is going to be in complete control of this. He has a no move clause.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, do you want to live through three and a half, 4 years of a rebuild in LA. You're getting paid. You're one of the highest paid defensemen in the NHL. You've won 2 Stanley Cups. You've won gold medals. It's going to take a little time to redo this. Do you want? And at the end of it, you're going to be 32 because he's 28 right now. Or do you want to go someplace of your choosing and have a chance to win Stanley Cups for the next 2 or 3 years?
Yeah.
If I'm Doughty, I mean, I'm sure he probably loves LA, loves the lifestyle there, and he's making big money. But if you still want to win cups, you're going to have to go someplace else.
He likes it there. He doesn't love it there, and he's been there enough. He's already, LA is great for a while. But then it does get boring. I mean,
I agree. I think he can be moved. I think the problem with moving him is because he has the no move, you probably aren't going to get the best value for him.
Right.
Yeah, he's going to be able to pick where he goes. I mean, and I heard 3 teams already, talking to people yesterday, and I wrote them in my blog. The Leafs were the least of those teams, but they were one of those teams. But the other 2 teams that were more along what I was told what Doughty wanted to do were the Rangers and the Red Wings. Now, the Red Wings are a strange one.
I thought you said the Islanders with Lionel.
Oh, the Islanders, Rangers. I'm sorry. Rangers, Islanders, and Red Wings. Sorry. Islanders and Red Wings. We got Russ here. I'm thinking Rangers on my mind. Islanders and Red Wings, right. 2 really interesting situations. I mean, 2 rebuilding teams as well, but maybe building in a better direction than the Kings are, maybe further
the Red Wings have more of the kind of assets I think the Kings would want than the Islanders, to be honest.
Yeah, but the problem with the 2 of those options is where are they anywhere close to being Stanley Cup contenders? The Red Wings are just as far away as the Kings.
Yeah, but in going in a different way. Like the Red Wings have.
Well, it depends. Like if the Red Wings are in the lottery and they have a chance of Hughes, then you can make the argument they're probably not.
Right.
But otherwise, you're right. They are. But they have the most to give up, and they will probably be easier to give up. Where the Islanders, they're not going to give up Barzal, and Anders Lee and Brock Nelson aren't locked up. So how the hell are you trading them?
Whereas teams like Toronto has major assets. Tampa Bay is looking to upgrade on their blue line. They have tons of assets to throw. Yeah. Do you think Nashville would trade PK Subban for Drew Doughty? I think they would.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I don't know that. Does PK have any say in that? No.
No, I don't think he has a no trade.
No, I don't think he has any say in it.
But he doesn't.
I don't know.
They're not going to. PK's way too popular there. I don't think they're moving him out.
I don't think they're moving him out either.
But I think that I do think obviously Toronto's got to get involved in this. He has said before he wouldn't mind playing in Toronto, so we know already that Doughty would like to play in Toronto. But the issue and the Islanders, yes, they have these players. Anders Lee is a big. What he's going to be UFA or RFA?
UFA.
He's a UFA.
I know that's like such a huge deal. Anders Lee could be the biggest UFA this summer if he goes there. Between him and Mark Stone, I think those are the 2 that you really have to look at. Are just like
Carlson, Stone.
Carlson's value is plummeting,
but it's still going to be big.
It's still Carlson,
big, but it's not going to be where these other guys are.
Carlson, Stone, Duchesne, Lee, Jake Gardner. Those are probably your top 5.
Yeah. It's actually, if those guys don't get signed, we're going to have a lot of fun on July 1st. But most of them are going to get. I don't think there's any way at all.
A few of them will get signed. Duchesne will get signed in Ottawa. I'm pretty sure of that.
I think Anders Lee is absolutely going to get signed in New York. I don't think
they've got the cap space. I don't know. Well, I don't know. Maybe Lou's just waiting till the right moment.
But the other thing with Lou is remember that the right moment for Lou could be like
Bobrovsky.
Could be Panarin, obviously, right? We're getting
Panarin. Yeah, sorry.
But
Panarin, Eberle.
Eberle still has value, though. He does.
Simmons
in Canada. I think that it's really shaping up to be a really fun July 1st. If these guys don't get signed and the numbers are getting so big and they're asking for so much money that you wonder if some of them won't.
Pavelski's a free agent.
What was that?
Pavelski.
Skinner. We forgot about Skinner.
Yeah,
but nobody believes Pavelski will never hit the market. He'll never hit the market.
Just like Austin Matthews will not reach July 1st for all this all this.
The offer sheet,
and don't forget the Joe Thornton sweepstakes.
No one thinks Austin. I mean, the thing.
Nobody's lining up for Joe anymore.
I wrote about it on the weekend about Austin Matthews.
Zuccarello.
People are crazy with the Austin Matthews offer sheet thing. I put a blog up in 300 comments within a minute. But it just, to me, this is the thing about this is people forget what offer sheets are. They aren't just a team throws an offer at you and you have to accept it. An offer sheet is an actual that you agree to sign with another team. That's actually Austin Matthews going, and when Shea Weber agreed he came into Philadelphia, visited with the Flyers, he signed with the Flyers.
And remember this: the max contract is 20% of the cap, and if the cap is $83 million, the max that he could be signed to is $16.6 million. And I'll bet you, if that offer sheet is made at 12 noon on July 1st, at 12:01, Kyle Dubas says, "F you, I'm signing him to the offer sheet."
Matthews is going nowhere. Now Marner is a more scary thing. If someone, if you want Marner, you offer sheet Matthews, right? And then you offer, because they're going to match Matthews to the max.
But I don't think Marner is going to sign an offer sheet. Marner, and I'm not. The Leafs are not going to rely on this, and we will talk. We can talk
more about this for sure.
Nobody's offer sheet.
Totally
guys.
and utterly ready to see the Toronto Maple Leafs have $27 million tied up in their top two centers.
I know, that's the thing. I mean, it's Thursday, and everybody's this is headed towards a very bad place, and it's
I'll start a GoFundMe for Arizona to do it.
Is it a bad place or is it a good place? You drafted well, you've got top.
Well, no, it's a good place, but it's a good place, but you don't have that. You don't have that young stud, which is why I don't think the Maple Leafs should be trading their first round draft pick. And what we talked about before, I honestly think that the Maple Leafs can get the defenseman that they need in the first round.
No, apparently, what it came out after
the first round for 2023 or 24. I mean.
Apparently, what came out after the contract for Nylander was signed was that there were teams out there that were bidding up Nylander in terms of what they would offer him, specifically so the price would get a little higher for the Leafs at 6.9. That way it would cripple them more. And that is the way the world works in the NHL.
At all. I was talking to a team very specifically who was talking contract with Nylander in the final hours of this. And they weren't doing that to drive up the price for the Leafs. They were just trying to sign a contract with Nylander, and they wanted Nylander.
I agree with that.
It had the same.
I mean, the thing that broke down though, why Nylander couldn't sign with any other team is his insistence on the crazy bonuses and his insistence on lockout security, which no one would give him, and I don't know that he got security with Toronto eventually.
Well, yeah, because he's got that massive bonus on July 1st of that year.
Those are things that no other team was willing to do.
No,
you have to remember this, though. You have to remember this. If most teams in the league, either have two guys similar to Matthews and Marner that they look at that they're going to have to pay and don't want to lose, like McKinnon, Rantanen, that nobody's going to offer sheet these guys because it's going to happen right to them.
And you know what?
Nylander. I talked to somebody else about this, and they were really adamant about this, and they were right. That when you think about when the thing about Taves and Kane when they signed those big dual contracts together, the cap at that point was in the 60s. It was I think mid to upper 60s when Kane and Taves signed that deal, and that's when that's also when Crosby and Malkin signed their big deals. It was in the 60s, even upper 50s maybe at that point. But so at that point, everyone's you can have two players like that, but now with the caps in the 80s, you can have four players like that. I mean, that's the reality of it. I mean,
all I can say is, and we'll find this out after July 1st of next year, is that Nylander may have planned his own demise in Toronto by that lockout insurance, because after they pay him the bonus, $8.3 million on July 1st, he's a $700,000 player for that year. And then his cap hit is 6.9. But I'm telling you right now, teams that can get a free year of William Nylander are going to say, okay, there you go.
You're right.
The only thing that I could see getting offer sheeted are goalies. I could see a goalie getting offer sheeted.
Yeah,
No,
right
you
now,
know,
that's possible. I agree with you.
You know who I can how I can see getting offer sheeted, Russ? Or remember guys like Kessler before they were established were getting offer sheeted because they were going to get paid. They were going to it's the mid-range guy. It's the guy like Kasperi Kapanen who
Right.
you know
gotta get going.
It could be a Kapanen. It could be, but I think if you're going to really risk it on an offer sheet, you're probably going to do it on a goalie when you don't have one or have no way of getting one.
We have to go. But I do. And Pete, you just put this up real quick. What's going on there?
I just saw former Hockey Buzz alumni Travis Yost just tweeted this out from Mark Berman. NHL sources: Rockets owner Tillman Fertitta has met with NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman about potential bringing NHL to Houston. Fertitta has had preliminary talks about buying and relocating the Arizona Coyotes to Houston. Nothing on that happening now. No decisions close. When contacted by Fox 26 Sports, Fertitta declined to comment, as did Rocket CEO Tad Brown.
Okay, interesting. We'll
get the moving trucks ready, baby.
I will tell you this: that I've done a lot. I spent a lot of time on relocation stuff back from when Winnipeg was happening and all that stuff, and when Belsilli was trying to get the team to Hamilton and I've learned a lot about the NHL inner workings. And the one thing that usually means a deal is dead is when it comes out in public, because the NHL is really good at this, at keeping these things.
They weren't that good with Atlanta. They
actually were. You remember that? They were really good with Atlanta.
No, we all knew they were going.
No, we knew eventually, but we didn't know nearly as soon. I mean, we knew eventually, but we did not know when by the point that was starting out.
Go look up the 2004 draft, where the Atlanta drafted 9 players and got 82 NHL games out of them. We all knew they were going. Trust me.
We knew they were going somewhere. We didn't know where, though. I mean, that was not.
There's something I love about Russ with his volume down. He's got to scream over top of that.
I know. I love it, too. All right. It's awesome. Very good. Anyway, we'll talk more about this and other possible locations besides Houston that I think are better in Texas. But we'll get into that. That's another discussion for another day. But remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. Enjoy the games tonight. We will talk to you tomorrow.
Yeehaw!